The church bell tolled slowly, echoing through the cold winter air. Snowflakes drifted softly over black umbrellas as mourners gathered, their breath misting in the gray sky. At the center of it all stood Anna Miller, her body trembling under a heavy black coat, her hands resting protectively on her swollen belly. Her husband, Richard Miller, had just been declared dead in a fiery car crash. At only 29 years old, Anna was already a widow, carrying a child who would never know his father. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks as she clutched the folded flag handed to her, her entire body shaking with grief. The minister's words blurred in her ears. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't even imagine how she was going to raise this baby alone. Her world had collapsed overnight. Friends whispered words of comfort, but Anna felt like she was buried alive. But as the coffin was lowered into the ground, the camera of fate shifted. Away from the cemetery, in a dimly lit apartment across town, a man leaned against the wall with a glass of whiskey in hand. His lips curved into a cruel smile. His face was familiar. It was Richard, very much alive. His eyes glimmered with satisfaction as he watched the scene of his own funeral broadcast briefly on the evening news. Beside him, a striking young woman with sharp features and fiery red lipstick rested her head on his shoulder. Sophia Lane, his mistress. She whispered, "It's done. She thinks you're gone." Richard smirked, his voice dripping with venom. "Good, soon she'll be gone too. No more wife, no more baby. Only us, and the life we deserve." Back at the funeral, Anna's older brother Michael stood stiffly near the grave, his arms crossed. Unlike the others, he wasn't crying. His sharp lawyer's eyes scanned the details of Richard's supposed death, his mind ticking with suspicion. Something about the accident report didn't add up. Why had Richard's car been found so far from his usual route? Why were the documents signed off so quickly? And why did the insurance payout already seem to be moving at lightning speed? Michael kept his thoughts to himself for the moment. He didn't want to burden Anna, who was already shattered. But deep down, a seed of doubt began to take root. Richard's story was far from finished. As the mourners drifted away, Anna stayed by the grave long after the service had ended. She whispered through sobs, "Richard, why did you leave me? What am I supposed to do without you?" She didn't know that her words were being mocked miles away by the very man she mourned. Her grief was real, raw, and unbearable. But the cruel truth would soon emerge. Richard hadn't died. He had staged everything. His plan was darker than anything Anna could imagine. He wasn't just leaving her. He wanted her gone forever. And when Anna finally discovered the truth, she wouldn't collapse. She would rise. And she would make sure Richard's final resting place was not a lie. Because in the end, she would be the one ordering his cremation. Anna Miller had never imagined her life would turn into a storm of heartbreak and betrayal. At 29, she was the kind of woman who believed in simple happiness. She didn't crave riches or fame. All she ever wanted was a warm home, a faithful husband, and a healthy child. She had grown up in a modest neighborhood, raised by hard-working parents who taught her that kindness was stronger than cruelty, and honesty always triumphed over lies. Those values defined her. After finishing college, she became a first-grade teacher. Every morning, she walked into her classroom with a smile, greeting children who adored her. For Anna, teaching wasn't just a job. It was her way of giving light to the world. Her colleagues often described her as gentle, selfless, and a little too trusting. But to Anna, trust was never a weakness. She believed that love meant giving your whole heart. That belief is why she fell so deeply in love with Richard Miller. She met him at a charity fundraiser hosted by the school district 3 years earlier. Richard, with his polished suit and confident smile, swept her off her feet. He seemed caring, attentive, and endlessly supportive. To Anna, he was the answer to her prayers. Within a year, they married, and for a while, life was picture perfect. Dinners together, quiet evenings on the porch, plans for the future. It all seemed real. When Anna found out she was pregnant, she cried tears of joy. She imagined decorating a nursery, singing lullabies, and watching Richard hold their child for the first time. She thought their bond would grow stronger, but something shifted in Richard the moment the pregnancy became real. He grew distant. Nights out became more frequent, phone calls more secretive, and excuses more frequent. Anna tried to believe he was simply stressed from work. She wanted to trust, She wanted to keep her family whole. Even as Richard's behavior worsened, Anna clung to her dreams. She decorated the nursery with her own hands, painting soft colors on the walls despite her growing fatigue. She read parenting books late at night, whispering promises to the little life growing inside her. Mommy will always protect you, no matter what. Now, standing at the edge of his grave, her trust had left her shattered. She felt abandoned, broken, and terrified of the future. The man she believed in, the man she thought would walk with her through every storm, was gone. Or so she thought. Yet despite the crushing grief, something inside Anna refused to die. Her love for her unborn child anchored her, kept her breathing when she wanted to collapse. She told herself she had to survive, even if every part of her felt destroyed. What Anna didn't know was that her pain was only the beginning. The betrayal she had already suffered would pale in comparison to the truth waiting to surface. Because soon, she would learn that her husband hadn't left this world at all, and that he wanted to erase both her and their child from it. The Miller home sat quietly at the edge of a suburban street, wrapped in the kind of silence that felt heavy, almost suffocating. It was a modest two-story house with a small yard and a white fence Anna had once dreamed of filling with flowers. To neighbors, it looked ordinary, just another home in a row of houses where families built their lives. But behind the front door, the air carried shadows of secrets and lies that Anna couldn't yet see. Before Richard's death, the house had been filled with laughter. There were evenings where the smell of Anna's homemade casseroles lingered in the kitchen, while Richard pretended to read the newspaper on the couch. Sometimes they played soft music while discussing baby names. To Anna, this house was her safe place. She believed its walls would protect her growing family. But after the funeral, everything felt different. The once cozy home had turned cold. Every creak of the floorboards startled her. Every whisper of the wind through the cracks sounded like a warning. Alone in their bed, Anna would curl up with her arms around her belly, whispering to the baby that they would be okay. Yet deep down, fear gnawed at her. She could no longer shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching her. The setting extended beyond the house. Across town stood Richard's office, a sleek glass building downtown where he spent long hours working late. It was in that very office where he first met Sophia Lane, the woman who would become both his comfort and his weapon. Behind closed blinds, the setting shifted from business deals to whispered promises of a future together, a future that excluded Anna. Another setting loomed in the distance, the hospital where Anna planned to give birth. She had already toured the maternity ward, taking careful notes of every detail. The nurses smiled warmly, unaware that danger was quietly weaving its way into Anna's medical records. For Richard, that hospital wasn't a place of new beginnings. It was a stage where he planned to end everything. And then there was Michael's apartment, just a few blocks away. Unlike the Miller home, his space felt grounded, safe, and filled with logic rather than illusion. Legal books lined his shelves, case files covered his desk, and the walls carried a sense of order. Michael's place would soon become the headquarters of Anna's fight for survival. These four settings, the fragile home, the deceitful office, the dangerous hospital, and the protective apartment, would form the battlefield of Anna's story. Each location carried its own role, its own weight in the coming storm. For Anna, the Miller home would become a cage of grief. For Richard, the office was his playground of lies. For Sophia, every corner of the city was a step closer to the life she thought she deserved. And for Michael, the apartment was where he would begin connecting the dots, determined to protect his sister no matter the cost. What no one knew yet was that these places would collide. The warmth of home, the coldness of betrayal, the fear of the hospital, and the strength of Michael's protection would soon crash together in an explosive truth. Because within these walls and streets, Anna would uncover that Richard's grave was nothing more than a stage prop, and her real fight had only just begun. Richard Miller had always worn two faces. To the outside world, he was the charming husband, the reliable businessman, the man with a perfect smile and a polite handshake. People admired him. Neighbors waved at him. Teachers at Anna's school thought he was supportive, even generous. But behind closed doors, away from the watchful eyes of society, Richard was something else entirely. His true nature was darker, colder, and far more dangerous. From the beginning, Richard was obsessed with appearances. He wanted success, but not the kind you earned with hard work. He craved shortcuts. He despised limits. He believed the world owed him more than what he had. When Anna fell in love with him, she saw only the mask, a man who listened, who cared, who promised a lifetime of stability. But Richard's promises were lies he told to secure her devotion. At 35, Richard was drowning in debts he refused to admit. His small business was crumbling, and instead of fixing the problems, he gambled away their savings in hopes of striking it big. The more he lost, the more he resented Anna. In his twisted mind, her pregnancy was a burden, another chain holding him down when he wanted freedom. Then came Sophia Lane. She was young, ambitious, and ruthless. Richard met her at his office, and their affair ignited quickly. With Sophia, Richard didn't have to pretend to be the devoted husband. He could reveal his hunger, his greed, his contempt for the life he had built with Anna. Sophia fueled his darkest desires, whispering in his ear that he deserved better, that Anna and the baby were obstacles standing in the way of their future. And Richard listened. He let Sophia's poison sink deep into his veins until betrayal became second nature. Together, they built fantasies of a glamorous life. Luxury trips, expensive cars, and endless freedom. But for that dream to come true, Anna had to disappear. Richard's plan was cunning. He staged his own death in a fiery car crash, making sure the details looked convincing enough for the authorities to close the case quickly. Insurance money would follow, and with Anna grieving and vulnerable, he could strike when she least expected it. In his eyes, Anna wasn't just his wife anymore. She was a target. The unborn child wasn't his legacy. It was a liability. What made Richard truly dangerous wasn't just his lies. It was his ability to make people believe them. He could look Anna in the eye and tell her she was the love of his life, even as he secretly plotted her downfall. He could shake Michael's hand and pretend to be the perfect brother-in-law while mocking him behind his back. But villains often underestimate the quiet strength of the people they try to destroy. Richard believed his plan was flawless, that no one would suspect he was alive, that Anna would crumble under the weight of grief. What he didn't know was that every mask eventually slips, and every lie leaves a trail. Richard thought he was the puppet master, but soon the strings he pulled would wrap tightly around his own neck. Because in his quest to erase his wife, he was unknowingly creating the very force that would bring him to his knees. For weeks after Richard's funeral, Anna lived in a haze of grief. She went through the motions of life without truly living it. Each morning, she forced herself out of bed for the baby's sake. Each night, she cried into her pillow, begging for strength. Her neighbors dropped off casseroles, her colleagues sent cards, but none of it filled the emptiness inside her. Still, small cracks began to appear in the stories she had been told. One Sunday afternoon, Anna attended a community memorial where Richard's name was read among other accident victims. People approached her with sympathy, hugging her and offering condolences. But then, in the middle of the crowd, a woman whispered something that froze Anna's heart. "I'm so sorry for your loss. But wasn't your husband just seen at the downtown hotel 2 days ago?" Anna's face went pale. "That's impossible," she stammered. The woman quickly apologized, insisting it must have been someone else, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Anna couldn't shake the thought. If Richard was gone, why were people still seeing him? That night, as she sat in her kitchen staring at the empty chair where Richard used to sit, her brother Michael dropped by. He set a stack of papers on the table, insurance forms, accident reports, and hospital records. His voice was firm. "Anna, something's not right. The details don't match. The car was found miles away from where Richard was supposed to be. And look at this. The body they claimed was his was burned beyond recognition. They identified him through dental records, but those can be faked." Anna felt dizzy. She shook her head, refusing to believe it. "Michael, please, don't do this to me. I can't handle the idea that he might have lied about something like this." But Michael leaned closer, his tone urgent. "I'm telling you, he's not gone. He wanted us to believe he was." Anna wanted to dismiss it, but the next day it delivered another blow. While shopping for groceries, she caught a glimpse of someone across the parking lot. A tall man in a dark coat, moving quickly, avoiding her eyes. For a split second, she swore it was Richard. Her heart raced, her hands shook, and she nearly dropped the bag of apples she was holding. "Richard?" she whispered into the wind, but the man disappeared before she could reach him. That night, the betrayal hit harder than ever. She looked around her quiet home and suddenly noticed the little things Richard had left behind, his favorite cufflinks missing, a tie she hadn't seen since before the accident, and a scent of cologne that shouldn't still linger if he had been gone all this time. For the first time, Anna realized she might not just be grieving a death. She might be living inside a trap, one carefully designed by the man she had trusted with her heart. The world thought Richard Miller was dead, but Anna's instincts told her something different. And soon, she would discover that the betrayal she feared wasn't just private. It was about to be exposed in the cruelest, most public way imaginable. Anna tried to hold herself together, but the weight of doubt was crushing her. She had been told Richard was gone, yet signs of him kept slipping through the cracks. Each day felt like walking through quicksand, every step pulling her deeper into confusion and fear. One evening, she sat alone in the nursery she had lovingly decorated. The walls were painted a soft pastel blue, the crib neatly assembled, a tiny blanket folded at the edge. It should have been a place of joy, a symbol of hope. Instead, it felt like a prison of unanswered questions. She ran her fingers over the crib's railing, her voice trembling. "Where are you, Richard? Why are people seeing you if you're supposed to be dead?" Her heart ached as tears streamed down her face. She had tried to be strong for the baby, but the silence in the house was unbearable. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made her jump. Sleep became impossible. The collapse began slowly but hit hard. One morning, Anna stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were sunken, her skin pale, her smile gone. She whispered to herself, "I'm losing my mind." Michael noticed the change. When he stopped by to check on her, he found her sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by unopened mail and untouched meals. She clutched her belly tightly, rocking back and forth. "Anna," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "You have to eat. You have to take care of yourself and the baby." She shook her head violently. "How can I take care of anyone when I don't even know what's real anymore? What if Richard is alive? What if he's out there waiting for me to let my guard down?" Michael put his hand on her shoulder, but her fear was beyond comfort. She felt trapped in her own home, haunted by memories of a man who might still be breathing, plotting, watching. That night, Anna reached her lowest point. Alone in the dark, she broke down completely. She screamed into her pillow, sobbing until her voice was raw. She begged for answers, for relief, for a sign that she wasn't going insane. Her cries echoed through the empty rooms, a heartbreaking reminder of just how abandoned she felt. At one point, she even whispered, "Maybe it would be easier if I just disappeared," but then, a faint kick from her unborn child pulled her back. She froze, her tears slowing as she placed her hand on her stomach. The baby was alive. The baby needed her. That moment reminded her of the promise she had made, to protect her child no matter what. Yet even with that spark of determination, she was still fragile, still teetering on the edge of collapse. Anna didn't know it yet, but her darkest breakdown was only the beginning of her rebirth. Because from the ashes of despair, she would soon rise stronger, and Richard would regret ever underestimating her. The morning after her breakdown, Anna forced herself out of bed. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but a strange determination burned in her chest. She realized she couldn't live in the shadows of doubt anymore. She needed answers. It started innocently. She decided to clean out Richard's office at home, something she had been avoiding since the funeral. The small room still smelled faintly of his cologne, and stacks of papers cluttered the desk. At first, everything looked ordinary. Bills, tax forms, half-finished notes. But as she sifted through the drawers, her hand brushed against something wedged deep in the back. It was an envelope, unmarked, sealed with tape. Her pulse quickened as she ripped it open. Inside were receipts, hotel stays, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, none of which had been for her. The most recent receipt was dated just 2 weeks ago, long after Richard's supposed death. Her hands shook as she whispered, "This can't be real." She dug deeper, pulling out a second envelope hidden under a pile of folders. This one contained photocopies of fake IDs, all with Richard's photo but different names. She felt her stomach drop. Her husband hadn't just staged his death. He had been preparing for a new life, one that didn't include her or their baby. At that moment, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. It read, "Stop digging, Anna. For your baby's sake." Anna's blood ran cold. Her eyes darted around the room, suddenly certain that someone was watching her. The walls felt like they were closing in. She slammed the drawer shut and backed away from the desk, her breath quick and shallow. Later that evening, she showed the receipts and IDs to Michael. His jaw tightened as he studied them. "This is proof," he said firmly. "He's alive, and he's close. Anna, you're not crazy. You were right all along." But Anna didn't feel relief. The confirmation that Richard was alive was both terrifying and devastating. The man she had loved, the father of her child, had chosen to erase her from his life. Worse, someone was watching her every move. Michael promised to protect her, but Anna could see the fear in his eyes too. They both knew Richard wasn't the type to leave loose ends. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She lay awake, clutching her belly, her mind racing. If Richard had gone this far, what else was he planning? Why did he want her gone so badly? Suddenly, the baby kicked again, stronger this time. Anna closed her eyes and whispered, "I'll protect you, no matter what." But in the silence of the house, the words from the text echoed in her head. "Stop digging." Anna now had the evidence, the truth she had been desperate to find. But with that truth came danger she couldn't yet comprehend. Because Richard wasn't just alive, he was watching, waiting, and closer than she could ever imagine. The gala was supposed to be a night of prestige and power. The city's wealthiest business leaders, politicians, and influencers filled the grand ballroom, their laughter echoing under the glittering chandeliers. Champagne glasses clinked, violins played softly, and the air shimmered with luxury. For Richard Miller, it was the perfect stage. Dressed in a tailored suit, he stood confidently by Sophia's side, believing his secrets were buried and his new life was secured. He thought Anna was broken, too fragile to fight back. He thought she was finished. But then the room went silent. The doors to the ballroom opened, and Anna entered. She wore a sleek black gown that hugged her figure, her hair swept back, her face radiant with a calm strength no one had ever seen before. Murmurs rippled across the room as heads turned. Some guests whispered, shocked to see her alive and glowing. Others gasped because they recognized her, Richard's supposedly widowed wife. Richard's smile faltered. His glass nearly slipped from his hand. Sophia's eyes widened in panic. Anna walked forward slowly, every step echoing like thunder in Richard's chest. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't crying. She wasn't broken. She was a woman transformed, ready to end the lies. When she reached the stage, the host politely tried to intervene, but Anna took the microphone with unwavering confidence. Her voice was steady, clear, and filled with the kind of pain that cut deeper than any blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I was told my husband died months ago. I buried an empty coffin. I mourned while he celebrated with his mistress. Tonight, you will see the truth for yourselves." Gasps filled the room. Anna turned to face Richard directly, her gaze sharp. "Richard Miller," she said, her voice trembling with righteous fury. "You faked your death to steal money, to betray your family, and to kill me and our unborn child. But your lies end here." With a signal to Michael, who had been waiting by her side, a projector lit up the ballroom wall. Photos and documents appeared. Receipts, fake IDs, insurance records, and even surveillance footage of Richard with Sophia after his supposed death. The evidence was undeniable. The crowd erupted in whispers and shouts. Some guests recoiled in disgust. Others pulled out their phones to record the scandal unfolding before their eyes. Sophia tried to slip away, but the spotlight caught her, exposing her as Richard's accomplice. Richard's face twisted in fury. He stepped forward, his voice booming. "This is a lie. She's hysterical. She's trying to ruin me." But Anna didn't flinch. She held her ground, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "No, Richard. The only liar here is you. And tonight, the world finally sees you for what you are." In that moment, the man who had thought himself untouchable crumbled. His empire of deceit collapsed in front of everyone he had tried to impress. And Anna, once the broken wife, stood tall in triumph, turning his stage of power into his stage of downfall. The gala was supposed to be a night of prestige and power. The city's wealthiest business leaders, politicians, and influencers filled the grand ballroom, their laughter echoing under the glittering chandeliers. Champagne glasses clinked, violins played softly, and the air shimmered with luxury. For Richard Miller, it was the perfect stage. Dressed in a tailored suit, he stood confidently by Sophia's side, believing his secrets were buried and his new life was secured. He thought Anna was broken, too fragile to fight back. He thought she was finished. But then the room went silent. The doors to the ballroom opened, and Anna entered. She wore a sleek black gown that hugged her figure, her hair swept back, her face radiant with a calm strength no one had ever seen before. Murmurs rippled across the room as heads turned. Some guests whispered, shocked to see her alive and glowing. Others gasped because they recognized her, Richard's supposedly widowed wife. Richard's smile faltered. His glass nearly slipped from his hand. Sophia's eyes widened in panic. Anna walked forward slowly, every step echoing like thunder in Richard's chest. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't crying. She wasn't broken. She was a woman transformed, ready to end the lies. When she reached the stage, the host politely tried to intervene, but Anna took the microphone with unwavering confidence. Her voice was steady, clear, and filled with the kind of pain that cut deeper than any blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd, "I was told my husband died months ago. I buried an empty coffin. I mourned while he celebrated with his mistress. Tonight, you will see the truth for yourselves." Gasps filled the room. Anna turned to face Richard directly, her gaze sharp. "Richard Miller," she said, her voice trembling with righteous fury, "you faked your death to steal money, to betray your family, and to kill me and our unborn child. But your lies end here." With a signal to Michael, who had been waiting by her side, a projector lit up the ballroom wall. Photos and documents appeared. Receipts, fake IDs, insurance records, and even surveillance footage of Richard with Sophia after his supposed death. The evidence was undeniable. The crowd erupted in whispers and shouts. Some guests recoiled in disgust, others pulled out their phones to record the scandal unfolding before their eyes. Sophia tried to slip away, but the spotlight caught her, exposing her as Richard's accomplice. Richard's face twisted in fury. He stepped forward, his voice booming. "This is a lie! She's hysterical. She's trying to ruin me." But Anna didn't flinch. She held her ground, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "No, Richard. The only liar here is you. And tonight, the world finally sees you for what you are." In that moment, the man who had thought himself untouchable crumbled. His empire of deceit collapsed in front of everyone he had tried to impress. And Anna, once the broken wife, stood tall in triumph, turning his stage of power into his stage of downfall. The echoes of the gala still lingered in Anna's mind long after the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling. Richard had been dragged out in handcuffs, shouting curses and empty threats, his face pale with rage. Sophia had been exposed, her glamorous facade shattered in front of the very people she had hoped to impress. Justice was finally in motion, and the truth no longer belonged to whispers, it belonged to the world. But for Anna, the real victory wasn't just in Richard's downfall. It was in her own rebirth. In the weeks that followed, she focused on rebuilding her life from the ashes of betrayal. She attended every court session, standing tall as Richard's crimes were laid bare. She gave statements with calm dignity, never once lowering her eyes, never once allowing him to see her shaken. She wasn't the grieving widow anymore. She was the survivor who had turned her pain into power. Her son was born in early spring. The moment she held him in her arms, tears of pure joy streamed down her face. She whispered, "You saved me. You gave me the strength to keep fighting." The baby's soft cries filled the hospital room, washing away the echoes of fear that had haunted her pregnancy. Michael stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, proud and protective. He had been her anchor through the storm, but even he knew it was Anna's resilience that carried her here. Watching her cradle her child, he realized his sister had become unbreakable. Months later, Anna stood before a group of women at a local community center. She had been invited to share her story, not as a victim, but as a voice of strength. The room was filled with mothers, wives, and daughters who listened intently as she spoke. "My husband thought I was weak," Anna began, her voice steady but emotional. "He believed that because I trusted, because I loved deeply, I could be destroyed. But he was wrong. What he saw as weakness was my greatest strength. Love does not make us fragile. It makes us unstoppable." The women leaned in, many wiping away tears. Anna continued, her eyes shining. "I survived betrayal, deception, and a plan meant to erase me. I survived because I chose to fight, not just for myself, but for the life growing inside me. To every woman here, never let anyone convince you that you are powerless. You carry strength inside you that no betrayal, no lie, no man can ever take away." When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Women stood, some hugging each other, others reaching for Anna's hands. She had touched something deep within them, a reminder that their worth, their strength, was greater than the pain they endured. That night, as Anna rocked her baby to sleep in the quiet nursery, she whispered her final vow. "You will grow up knowing that your mother never gave up. You will know that love and truth always win." And for the first time in a long time, Anna felt peace. The woman who was once meant to be erased had written her own ending, a story of survival, strength, and a victory no one could take away. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every bench, cameras lined the back wall, and the weight of silence pressed on the room as the trial of Richard Miller began. Once admired in social circles, Richard now sat in a prison jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his eyes darting nervously. The mask of charm he had worn for years was gone. What remained was a desperate man stripped of power. Anna sat in the front row, her brother Michael beside her, her baby resting quietly in a carrier at her feet. She didn't come to gloat. She came for closure. For months she had carried the scars of betrayal, but now she would watch justice be done. The prosecutor painted a chilling picture of Richard's crimes. Evidence projected on a large screen revealed everything. The staged accident, the fake IDs, the insurance fraud, and most horrifying of all, the plan to eliminate Anna and their unborn child. Gasps filled the room as the details were laid bare. Richard had not only betrayed his wife, he had betrayed humanity itself. When Anna was called to the stand, she walked with steady steps. Her voice did not shake as she recounted the pain of burying an empty coffin, the terror of being stalked, and the heartbreak of discovering her husband had plotted against her. Every word was like a dagger to Richard's crumbling facade. He tried to glare at her, but she didn't flinch. She looked him straight in the eye and spoke the truth he could no longer deny. Then came Sophia's turn. Dressed in expensive clothes that now looked cheap under the courtroom lights, she tried to present herself as a victim. She claimed Richard manipulated her, that she never knew the full extent of his plan. But the evidence told another story. Text messages between her and Richard revealed her eagerness for Anna's disappearance, her promises of a new life built on Anna's suffering. The jury didn't buy her lies. Neither did Anna. As Sophia broke down in fake tears, Anna realized something important. This woman had once been her replacement, the shadow that threatened her life. Now she was nothing more than a desperate accomplice, exposed and powerless. After weeks of testimony, the verdict came. Richard Miller was found guilty on all counts: insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and faking his own death. The judge's gavel came down hard. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sophia faced her own punishment. Though she avoided the harshest sentence by testifying against Richard, she was convicted of conspiracy and fraud. Her career was destroyed, her reputation ruined, and her freedom cut short. The glamorous mistress who once dreamed of wealth and power would now live in shame and regret. As Richard was led away in shackles, he turned back toward Anna, his eyes burning with hatred. But Anna didn't look at him with fear. She looked at him with strength. He no longer had control. He no longer had power. His downfall was complete. In that courtroom, justice wasn't just served, it was delivered by the very woman he had tried to erase. When the trial ended and Richard was locked behind bars, Anna stepped outside the courthouse with her baby in her arms. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. She inhaled deeply, as though her lungs had been starved of oxygen during the storm. The nightmare was over. But her healing journey was only beginning. At home, the quiet no longer terrified her. Instead, it became a space of recovery. The house that once felt like a cage slowly transformed into a sanctuary again. She repainted the nursery, this time in soft yellow, a color that made her smile. She filled the shelves with books and toys, tiny promises of a future that would no longer be stolen from her. Every night she rocked her son to sleep, whispering lullabies with tears of gratitude in her eyes. "We made it," she told him softly. "We're safe now." Mommy kept her promise. His little fingers wrapped around hers, grounding her in the present moment. Still, healing wasn't easy. There were nights when the memories clawed their way back. Richard's face, Sophia's smirk, the chilling text messages. Some nights she woke up in a cold sweat, clutching her son, afraid of shadows that weren't really there. But she learned to breathe through the fear. She reminded herself that Richard was behind bars, that his power over her was gone forever. Michael remained by her side, visiting often, helping with the baby, reminding her she wasn't alone. He became more than a brother. He became a father figure to her son, filling the void Richard had left. Seeing Michael gently rock the baby or laugh as the child grabbed his tie gave Anna hope that her son would grow up surrounded by love, not lies. Slowly, Anna began opening herself back to the world. She returned to her job at the elementary school, greeted warmly by her students who had missed her. Their laughter filled her days with joy, their innocence reminding her of why she had chosen teaching in the first place. For the first time in a long while, she felt purpose beyond survival. On weekends, she started attending support groups for women who had endured betrayal and abuse. Sitting in a circle of survivors, she shared her story not with shame, but with pride. Each time she spoke, she grew stronger. She saw how her words inspired others, how her journey gave them courage to face their own pain. Anna realized healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about reclaiming her future. It was about choosing not to be defined by betrayal, but by resilience. One evening, as the sun set in golden light across the yard, Anna held her son close and whispered, "You will grow up knowing the truth, but also knowing that love is stronger than hate. We are proof that darkness doesn't win." Her scars would always be there, invisible yet deep. But those scars were no longer marks of weakness. They were symbols of survival. Anna had not only survived Richard, she had risen beyond him, building a new life rooted in strength, love, and unshakable hope. Spring arrived gently, bringing warmth to the city after a long, bitter winter. For Anna Miller, it symbolized more than a change of season. It was the start of a new chapter, a life no longer haunted by Richard's lies, but defined by her own strength and choices. Each morning, sunlight spilled into her home as she held her son by the window. The boy's laughter echoed through the rooms, replacing the silence that once suffocated her. She watched him reach for the light with tiny fingers and thought, "That's what we're doing. We're reaching for the light together." Anna began to rebuild her world piece by piece. She returned to teaching, but with a deeper sense of purpose. Standing in front of her class, she carried not just lessons in math and reading, but in resilience. When her students asked why she had been gone, she simply said, "Sometimes life tests us, but if we keep believing, we can overcome anything." The children nodded, too young to understand the depth of her words, but they felt the warmth in her voice. Outside of work, Anna made changes that symbolized her new beginning. She planted a garden in the yard, something she had always wanted but never had time for. With each flower that bloomed, she felt a piece of her heart mend. She repainted the living room, letting bright colors chase away the shadows Richard had left behind. Financially, things were not easy. Richard's debts had left scars on their accounts, and though she received some compensation after the trial, it wasn't wealth that Anna sought, it was stability. With Michael's guidance, she created a plan, determined to provide for her son without depending on anyone else. Every step, every small victory, reinforced the truth. She was capable, she was strong, and she was free. In the community, Anna's story had spread. People approached her in the grocery store, thanking her for her courage. Women sent her letters, saying her strength gave them hope to leave their own toxic relationships. At first, Anna felt shy about the attention, but soon she realized that sharing her journey wasn't just about her. It was about helping others rise too. Michael remained her closest ally. He encouraged her to dream again, to imagine a future filled not with fear, but with possibilities. "You don't have to stay in the shadow of what happened," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch. "You can build something beautiful out of it." And Anna believed him. For the first time, she started to picture a life beyond survival. Birthday parties for her son, vacations by the beach, maybe even love again one day. Not love born out of desperation or lies, but love grounded in truth and respect. One evening, holding her son as he drifted to sleep, Anna whispered, "This is our new life. No more fear, no more betrayal, just us and the future we're going to build together." The storm had ended, but the horizon stretched wide with promise. Anna was no longer defined by what she had lost. She was defined by what she was creating, a life full of hope, dignity, and new beginnings. Months passed, and Anna's life began to feel steady again. She had settled into routines, teaching during the day, caring for her baby at night, and finding quiet joy in the simple moments she once feared would never return. The shadows of betrayal were fading, and for the first time peace seemed possible. But calm often hides storms waiting to strike. Richard Miller sat in his prison cell, his mind festering with rage. The once proud man now wore the face of a criminal, but inside, his arrogance had not died. He replayed his downfall over and over, consumed by one thought. Anna had humiliated him. She had taken everything, his freedom, his reputation, his control, and he couldn't accept it. One evening, as the guards patrolled the corridors, Richard scribbled furiously on a piece of paper. It wasn't a confession, it was a plan. Using connections he had built during his years of shady business, he reached out to men who owed him favors, men who operated outside the law. He promised them money hidden away, money that Anna didn't even know existed. All they had to do was deliver one final message for him. The message wasn't words, it was fear. A week later, Anna came home from school to find her front door slightly ajar. Panic shot through her veins as she rushed inside, clutching her baby close. The house looked untouched, except for the nursery. On the crib, a single sheet of paper rested. Her blood ran cold as she read the words written in Richard's handwriting. "This isn't over. You belong to me." Her knees buckled and she sank to the floor, holding her child against her chest. The false calm she had been living in shattered instantly. Michael rushed over as soon as she called, his face hardening with fury. "He's behind this," he said. "Even from prison, he's trying to control you. But I won't let him succeed." Together they went to the police. The handwriting was analyzed and the threat confirmed. Though Richard was physically behind bars, his influence still reached beyond the prison walls. Anna realized that until Richard's power was fully destroyed, she would never truly be free. That night, she sat by her son's crib, watching him sleep. Fear gnawed at her, but so did determination. She whispered, "You will never live in your father's shadow. I won't let him win." In prison, Richard smirked as he imagined her terror. To him, the message was proof he still held control. But what he didn't know was that his desperate move would backfire. By trying to reassert power, he was giving Anna and Michael the leverage they needed to finish what had been started. The false calm was gone. The battle wasn't finished, and Anna, once a grieving wife, was about to become the force that would finally bury Richard's influence forever. The threat left on the crib was the breaking point. Anna knew she couldn't continue living in fear, waiting for Richard's shadow to creep back into her life. She had already survived his lies, his staged death, his betrayal. She wasn't going to let him control her from behind prison bars. Michael understood this better than anyone. Sitting at her kitchen table late one evening, surrounded by legal documents and notes, he leaned forward, his expression hard. "We can't just react to Richard anymore. We need to go on the offensive. We need to cut off every piece of power he thinks he still has." Anna nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she held a cup of tea. "But how? He's in prison. I thought that was the end." Michael's eyes narrowed. For men like Richard, prison isn't the end, it's just another stage. He still has connections, hidden money, people willing to do his dirty work. If we want real peace, we have to expose every last piece of his corruption. We have to make him irrelevant. The plan began with Richard's finances. Michael contacted investigators he trusted, digging into every bank account, every shell company, every offshore asset Richard had ever touched. Slowly, the puzzle came together. Richard had hidden money, enough to fund his schemes and buy loyalty. But now, that money became a weapon Anna and Michael could use against him. Next, they targeted his network. Richard's associates, the men who had helped him leave the threatening message, were tracked down. Some were arrested on unrelated charges. Others flipped quickly when offered deals. Piece by piece, Richard's reach beyond the prison walls began to crumble. But the most powerful strike came from Anna herself. Encouraged by Michael, she agreed to sit down for a televised interview. The cameras rolled as she shared her story, not just about the betrayal and the trial, but about the ongoing threats. She looked straight into the lens and said, "My husband thought fear could control me. He thought silence could bury the truth. But I will not be silent, and I will not be afraid. He cannot hurt us anymore." The broadcast went viral. People across the city and beyond saw her strength. Public outrage grew against Richard, and pressure mounted on the prison system to isolate him completely. Guards increased surveillance, cutting off his ability to send messages. His so-called allies turned their backs, unwilling to be linked to a man whose power was disintegrating. When Richard saw the interview from a small prison television, his face twisted with rage. He smashed his fist against the wall, realizing the truth. Anna wasn't the broken woman he left behind. She was the one dismantling his empire piece by piece. Back at home, Anna felt a calm she hadn't known in years. She tucked her son into bed and whispered, "We're winning. He can't touch us anymore." It wasn't just survival anymore. It was victory in motion. Because by cutting Richard's strings, Anna was finally turning the man who once controlled her life into nothing more than a powerless ghost. Even as his empire crumbled and his influence faded, Richard Miller refused to accept defeat. Locked behind bars, stripped of wealth and allies, he still clung to the belief that he could twist the story in his favor. If he couldn't control Anna with fear, he would try something more dangerous: manipulation. It began with letters. One morning, Anna opened her mailbox and froze. Inside was an envelope marked with the prison's return address. Her hands shook as she tore it open. The letter inside was written in Richard's neat handwriting, dripping with false remorse. "Anna, I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes. But I still love you. I love our son. Don't let Michael poison you against me. He's always hated me, and now he's filling your head with lies. Deep down you know the truth. We belong together. Please, bring the baby to see me. He deserves to know his father." Anna's stomach churned as she read the words. Love? This wasn't love. This was manipulation disguised as apology. For a moment she felt the old wounds open again, the longing for the man she thought Richard had been, the father she wanted for her child. But then, her hands tightened around the letter and she ripped it in two. When she showed Michael, he wasn't surprised. "Classic Richard," he muttered. "When threats don't work, he plays the victim. He wants you to doubt yourself. Don't give him that power." But Richard wasn't finished. Weeks later, news broke that he had filed a motion through his lawyers. In a shocking twist, he was demanding visitation rights for the child he had once tried to destroy. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief as the request was read aloud. Richard, dressed in prison garb, stood tall and defiant. "I have a right to see my son," he declared. "Anna is turning him against me. I deserve to be part of his life." Anna's blood boiled. She stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "You tried to kill me? You tried to kill him before he was even born. You don't deserve to even say the word father." The judge's eyes narrowed, reviewing the evidence of Richard's past crimes. His manipulative ploy collapsed under the weight of his own history. The motion was denied, his last attempt at control publicly humiliated. But Anna realized something important that day. Richard would never stop trying. Even broken, even caged, he would keep reaching for ways to pull her down. That knowledge was terrifying, but it also strengthened her resolve. Outside the courthouse, holding her son in her arms, she looked into his innocent eyes and whispered, "He will never own us again. Not with threats, not with lies, not with anything." Inside prison walls, Richard seethed. His last manipulation had failed. For the first time, he felt powerless not just in body, but in spirit. And in that defeat, he began to realize the truth he had always denied. Anna had already won. The day of the final hearing arrived, the one that would close every open door Richard still had left. The courtroom buzzed with reporters and spectators, eager to witness the last chapter of a scandal that had shocked the city. Anna walked in, with Michael by her side, her son safely at home with a trusted friend. She wore no extravagant clothes, only a simple dress and a quiet strength that radiated from within. Across the room sat Richard Miller, handcuffed, dressed in an orange jumpsuit. But even now he tried to carry himself like the man he used to be, smiling arrogantly, flashing looks meant to intimidate Anna. He believed that if he could just get under her skin one last time, he could reclaim some shred of control. When the judge called for Anna to testify, the room fell silent. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor, and turned to face Richard directly. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "For years I believed this man was my partner, my protector, the father of my child," she began. "But the truth is, he was my enemy. He faked his own death. He plotted to kill me while I carried his child. And when that failed, he tried to manipulate me with lies from behind prison walls." Richard smirked, interrupting. "You're dramatic as always, Anna. You loved me once. You still do. You wouldn't be here otherwise." Her gaze hardened. "You're wrong. I am here because I don't love you anymore. I am here because I love myself, my son, and the truth more than I ever loved your lies." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Richard's smirk faltered, the power slipping from his face. Anna turned to the judge. "He wants to believe he still has control over me. But the only thing he controls now is the memory of what he destroyed, and I will not let him destroy anything else." The judge listened carefully, his expression firm. He reviewed the evidence one last time, the staged accident, the insurance fraud, the conspiracy, the threats. Finally, his gavel struck. "Richard Miller, your appeals are denied. You will serve life in prison without the possibility of parole. This court considers the matter closed." The sound of the gavel echoed like thunder. Richard lunged forward, his voice cracking. "Anna, this isn't over. You can't erase me." Anna turned to him one last time. Calm, composed, and unshaken, she whispered loud enough for him to hear. "You already erased yourself." The guards pulled him back as he screamed her name, his voice filled with desperation. But Anna didn't flinch. She walked out of the courtroom with her head high, her brother at her side, leaving Richard behind forever. In that moment, the roles had reversed completely. Richard was the prisoner, not just of the system, but of his own hatred and failure. And Anna was free, free to live, free to love, free to build a future untouched by his poison. The final confrontation was not about anger or revenge. It was about closure. And with that closure, Anna sealed Richard's fate and opened the door to her own lasting peace. While Richard's fate was sealed in prison, Sophia Lane's downfall unfolded more slowly, like a tower crumbling brick by brick. She had once imagined herself living a glamorous life by Richard's side, dripping in wealth and luxury. Instead, she found herself despised, exposed, and utterly alone. The scandal had destroyed her career. Once a polished executive assistant with ambitions of climbing higher, she was now blacklisted from every company in town. Employers saw her not as a victim, but as a co-conspirator. Every resume she sent was met with silence. Every interview cut short once her name was recognized. Sophia's beauty and charm, which she had wielded like weapons, no longer opened doors. Her finances quickly unraveled. Without Richard's hidden money to lean on, she couldn't afford her expensive lifestyle. The condo she once flaunted on social media was repossessed. The designer clothes she had paraded at galas were sold piece by piece, just to pay her legal fees. Soon, she was living in a small, dim apartment, the kind of place she once mocked. But the worst blow wasn't financial, it was social. The very friends who once sipped champagne with her at Richard's side now avoided her like a disease. At the grocery store, strangers whispered and pointed, mothers pulled their children away. To them, Sophia wasn't just a woman who made mistakes. She was the woman who helped a man try to kill his pregnant wife. In court, her testimony against Richard had saved her from the harshest sentence, but it hadn't saved her from prison entirely. She served time for conspiracy and fraud, and those months behind bars stripped away the last remnants of her pride. Gone were the tailored dresses and carefully applied makeup. She wore the same uniform as everyone else, ate the same bland meals, and endured the same cold stares from women who despised her for her part in Richard's crimes. When she was finally released, nothing was left of the life she had once dreamed of. Her reputation was ashes, her future uncertain. She had traded her dignity for a man who never truly loved her, and all she had gained was infamy. One afternoon, as she walked past a cafe, she caught sight of Anna inside, sitting with Michael and her baby. The three of them were laughing, surrounded by warmth and love. Sophia froze on the sidewalk, her heart twisting with a mix of envy and regret. That life, peace, family, real love, could have been hers if she hadn't chosen greed and betrayal. But choices have consequences, and hers had led her here. She turned away quickly, hiding her face beneath dark glasses, but the sting remained. Sophia was not the heroine of this story, nor even a tragic victim. She was the architect of her own ruin. And as Anna thrived in the light of truth, Sophia was left to wander in the shadows of her own mistakes, forever remembered not as Richard's great love, but as his greatest accomplice. Months had passed since Richard was sentenced and Sophia's ruin was complete. The city had moved on to other scandals, other headlines. But for Anna, the echoes of betrayal still lingered in quiet moments. Healing was not instant. It was a slow, fragile journey, one step at a time. On a crisp autumn morning, Anna decided to do something she had avoided since the day of Richard's staged funeral. She dressed warmly, bundled her son in a soft blanket, and drove to the cemetery where she had once wept over an empty coffin. The air was cool, the leaves turning gold and red, the world preparing for change. She carried her child in her arms as she walked toward the grave that bore Richard's name. The stone marker stood still and cold, a reminder of the lie she had once believed. For a moment, her chest tightened, the old pain rising. She remembered the tears, the hopelessness, the nights of screaming into her pillow. But now, as her son gurgled softly against her shoulder, she felt something new. Not fear, not sorrow. Release. She knelt down, brushing her hand over the headstone. "I buried you once in my heart," she whispered, "but today I bury the power you had over me." Her eyes filled with tears, but these were not tears of despair. They were tears of freedom. Michael stood nearby, giving her space but ready if she needed him. He watched his sister speak, proud of the strength she had found. Anna continued, her voice steady. "You tried to break me, Richard. You tried to erase me and our son. But look at us now. We survived, we thrived, and you," she glanced at the stone, "you will never hurt us again." Her son stirred in her arms, reaching a tiny hand toward the sunlight streaming through the trees. Anna smiled through her tears. That gesture felt like a sign, a reminder that life always reaches toward the light, no matter how dark the shadows. She stood, straightened her shoulders, and turned her back on the grave. As she walked away, it no longer felt like a place of mourning. It felt like a closed chapter, one she would never revisit. Later that day, Anna joined Michael and a few close friends for dinner. Laughter filled the room, warm and genuine. She raised her glass of sparkling cider in a quiet toast. "To the future," she said softly, "to healing, to love." For the first time, the weight in her chest lifted completely. She realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. Truly living. That night, rocking her son to sleep, Anna sang softly, her voice gentle but strong. The baby's eyelids fluttered shut, his breathing even and calm. As she gazed at his tiny face, peace washed over her. The catharsis was complete. Anna had released the pain, reclaimed her joy, and stepped fully into a life where love and truth triumphed over lies and betrayal. Anna never imagined her pain would one day become a story told by others, a story that inspired hope instead of fear. But as the years passed, her journey transformed from personal survival into something larger, a legacy. It began with the community center. After her healing, Anna continued attending support groups, not only as a participant, but as a mentor. Women who walked in with bruised hearts and tearful eyes found comfort in her presence. She spoke openly, never hiding her scars. "I thought my life was over," she would tell them, "but it was just beginning. If I could survive betrayal and come out stronger, so can you." Her words carried weight because they came from truth. Slowly, Anna became a voice that others leaned on. Soon, invitations came from schools, conferences, and even national organizations. She wasn't just Anna Miller, the betrayed wife. She became Anna Miller, the advocate, the survivor, the woman who turned ashes into strength. Michael often accompanied her, proud of the sister who had once been so broken but now stood as a beacon. "You've turned tragedy into power," he told her one evening after a speaking event. Anna smiled softly. "I didn't do it just for me. I did it for him." She glanced at her son, now a bright little boy with his father's eyes but none of his father's cruelty. Her son grew up knowing the truth, not the ugly details that could scar him, but the lesson that his mother wanted him to carry. That love and courage outlast lies and betrayal. On his 10th birthday, as he blew out his candles, Anna whispered to him, "Your life is proof that light wins. Never forget that." Meanwhile, Richard's name faded into obscurity. Locked away for life, his influence shrank to nothing. His once feared reputation became a cautionary tale whispered in law schools and criminal classes, how arrogance and deceit lead only to ruin. Sophia, too, disappeared into the shadows of regret, her downfall serving as a reminder of the cost of greed. But Anna's name lived on, not in scandal, but in honor. Newspapers wrote features about her resilience, documentaries captured her journey. And when asked how she managed to endure so much, Anna always gave the same answer. "I wasn't alone. I had my child, my brother, and the strength inside me that Richard never saw. That strength is inside every woman." Years later, standing on a stage in front of hundreds of women, Anna shared her closing message. Her son sat proudly in the front row, clapping the loudest. Her voice carried through the room, steady and unshaken. "We all carry scars. Some are visible, some are hidden. But scars don't define us. They remind us of what we survived. I was supposed to be erased, yet here I am, living, thriving, and teaching my son that truth always rises. My story isn't just mine. It belongs to every woman who refuses to be silenced." The crowd erupted in applause, but Anna didn't see it as glory. She saw it as healing. Healing not just for herself, but for everyone who found courage in her journey. Anna's legacy was not betrayal, not pain, not fear. It was survival, strength, and the undeniable truth that no one, not even Richard, could take her life away from her again. So that's it, my wonderful friends. The story has reached its end. And if you are still here with me right now, it must mean something has touched your heart in some way. Maybe it's Anna's courage. Maybe it's the reminder that no matter how heavy betrayal feels, healing is possible. This story is not just about Richard's downfall. It's about Anna's rebirth. It's about learning that strength often shows up in the quietest moments. The moment you choose to get up, to fight, to keep moving forward. The Stoics used to say, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Seneca. Anna thought she was powerless, but once she faced her fear, she discovered she had more strength than she ever believed. And isn't that true for us too? Life will throw storms, heartbreak, even betrayals we never see coming. But as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Anna's pain became her path to power, and the very obstacles meant to destroy her became the reason she rose. So if you are carrying scars right now, visible or invisible, let Anna's journey remind you. Your scars don't make you weak. They prove that you survived. And if Anna could rebuild her life from ashes, so can you. Now, I want to hear from you. Did this story move you? Did it stir something inside? If it did, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Together, we can keep telling stories that heal, stories that remind us all that love and truth always win in the end. Because maybe tonight, what touched your heart wasn't just Anna's story. Maybe it was a reminder that your story isn't finished either.